Alright guys, so today's notes are going to be the first and second line of defense for the human immune system. So what is the immune system? This is our body's defense against disease-causing organisms, any cells that aren't performing properly, and also foreign particles or anything that's not supposed to be in our body. So disease-causing organisms can be defined as bacteria, fungus, some protists will even cause a disease, and also a disease-causing particle known as the viruses. So today we're going to be going over the first and second line of defense. So this is going to deal with your body's response to any invader, regardless of if it's seen it before or not. So we will not be talking about immunity today. So the first line of defense is our skin. Went over this in the integumentary system. So as a reminder, the epidermis is our most superficial layer of our skin. And the very outer part of it, stratum corneum, is dead. And it forms a shield against our invaders, and also this will secrete or release chemicals that can kill potential invaders. Fun fact, you shed between 40 and 50,000 skin cells a day. And this image here has a blown up image from a microscope of that very top layer of your epidermis. So looks super dry. Another member of the first line of defense is our mucus and our cilia. Alright, so areas of our body that are moist and produce some sort of mucus are known as mucous membranes. So as you breathe in, foreign particles and bacteria will bump into the mucus throughout your respiratory system. So think about in your nose. Alright, there's actually a function for the mucus that's in your nose, and that is to help catch any invader and stick it there so it does not infect you. You also are going to have hair-like structures called cilia that are going to take this mucus and bring it to our throat for coughing or swallowing. So if we cough, that means that we are getting rid of that invader, shooting it out of our body. If we swallow it, that just means that later on our immune system will respond to it. So this is a perfect example of why you should cover your nose and mouth when you sneeze, even if we weren't in a pandemic, because that's just nasty. And then below that is a close-up of these cilial or ciliated cells for mucus transport. So they look kind of like little fingers, or the little ends of a mop, so that it is going to sweep that mucus into the proper spot. So thought though, don't swallowed bacteria have a good chance of infecting you? Let's see. Alright, so the answer is, for the most part, no. Alright, so after you swallow some of that bacteria, the first thing that your body will use is the saliva. So what happens when you get a paper cut? The first thing you do, typically without thinking, is just kind of put it up to your mouth. So saliva actually contains a lot of chemicals that will break down and kill bacteria. The only problem is thousands of different types of bacteria can survive these chemicals. So if they make it past the saliva, what's going to happen? Well, they encounter our stomach acid. Now, our stomach acid is, like the name says, incredibly acidic, very strong. So they can be broken down almost immediately by that stomach acid. Now, our stomach has to produce lots of mucus in there as a coating, or else the acid would eat through our stomach, and sometimes that happens and people get what's called an ulcer. So that stomach acid is really not friendly to bacteria that doesn't belong in our body. So think of the human body as a hollow plastic tube. So the food is digested within the hole in the tube, but it never actually enters the solid plastic material surrounding it. So the tube's inner surface is our digestive system. The outer surface is the skin, and the plastic interior is our actual body. Now, we do have natural bacteria in our digestive tracts, and honestly in all parts of our body. An example of that is Escherichia coli. You know it as E. coli. So these bacteria are technically considered outside the body because they're not inside of the tissues. So they're going to help us with digestion. Alright, so it's only when you have too much E. coli or they're introduced in an unnatural manner. So for example, eating contaminated food. You'll hear a lot of times grocery stores will come and say, hey, we're going to recall something because it had E. coli on it. So that is an unnatural way for us to get E. coli, which will then make us sick. You get, stomach problems, diarrhea, and so on. It's not a fun bacteria. All right, our second line of defense is the white blood cells. So the image to the right here has the white blood cells reaching out to try to eat that green little bacteria. So if our invaders actually get within our body, so they've made it past the saliva and the stomach acid, our white blood cells are going to start attacking. So our white blood cells are circulating throughout the blood normally. So think of it like they're on patrol. But they will go anywhere they need to if invaders are detected inside the body. Now, we've got a lot of different types of white blood cells. So this one we're going to talk about is called a phagocyte. So phago is from Greek, which means to eat. So white blood cells go around and eat the bacteria. So think of it like it wraps, it almost looks like arms wrapping it in a hug, except then it eats that bacteria. Once that happens, that phagocyte breaks the foreign particles apart in an organelle called the lysosome. That's something that you learned in bio. You might have forgotten it. You might not have been paying attention. But our lysosomes in our cells are basically our digestive organelles. So this cell here is going to eat that bacteria. Singular is bacterium. And it's going to get broken down, kind of like we break down food in our stomach. So we like these phagocytes because they go ahead and eat those bacteria or other foreign particles. So where, though, could invaders hide from phagocytes? All right, so let's think. It's pretty easy for a cell to tell when something doesn't belong there because it does not have the markers on the outside to identify it as this belongs to the body. So where could these guys hide from the phagocytes? Well, they'd have to go somewhere that has the markers that says this is part of a body. So this is an example of what viruses do. So they enter into the cell. All right, so they hide out in the cell. They are going to take over the organelles, take over the cell and force it into making more viruses. After it gets full of viruses, the cells will burst, called apoptosis, which I like that word because it has the word pop in it, and that's what the cells do. And that's going to release thousands of viruses that are going to go on and invade and infect new cells. So on the left, we have a cell before it was infected or invaded, and after, when it's full of those viruses and getting ready to burst. So viruses hide in there so that they don't get noticed. So another part of our second line of defense is the interferon. So when those body cells are infected, they release a chemical called interferon, and that's going to prevent viruses from attacking other body cells. So it's a chemical defense. Over here we've got a picture of a virus that we typically call, the shape is a bacteriophage. In biology, we made these out of paper and pipe cleaners in class. Your teacher might not have done that because it was extremely frustrating to do it properly, but I'm sure you've seen the shape before. So then what happens to cells that are already infected? So the interferon prevents viruses from getting into the other cells, but what happens to that already infected cell? So now we have our assassins. Okay, so those are the T cells. They are also referred to as natural killer cells, and they can recognize infected human cells and cancer cells in the body. So these guys will go in, they can identify that this cell is infected. They are going to kill it by making it go through apoptosis. So it's going to cause the cell to burst before, hopefully, it started producing any viruses. And then it's going to continue to search for more cells to kill. So these I like to think of as the assassin cells, because that is their job, to go and find cells that are infected or cancer cells, cells that are going through unregulated cell growth, and get rid of them. And because that cell already released that interferon, even if it did start producing viruses, that chemical will prevent the virus from infecting another cell. So what then happens? The inflammatory response. So when you have an infection, you typically see redness and you feel heat. So that's because those injured body cells release chemicals called histamines, which cause the inflammatory response. So your capillaries, which are types of blood vessels, are going to dilate or expand. So pyrogens, they're a particle that is going to go up to your hypothalamus in the brain. That's going to cause the temperature of your body to rise. That allows for certain processes to speed up to take care of this infection. You're going to feel pain, so those pain receptors will activate. You get this lovely red mark here, and you can even see on this person's leg where they had the part enter into the body. So potentially something like a spider bite or just a cut that got infected. Then the white blood cells are going to go to that infected area, like a shark or a group of sharks finding, a dead animal that is bleeding out. So they're attracted to it like sharks are to blood. So we get heat, we get redness, we get pain, but we get the white blood cells there to stop the infection. All right, so we will go over the next part in the next class. At this time, please make sure that you complete your notes assessment. It's just a quick assessment to make sure that you actually listened, so you should get a 100.